This episode of the Driving Safety Show is sponsored by Drivers Alert, celebrating 30 years of helping companies keep their drivers safe. To learn more, visit driversalert.com. Distracted driving, drunk driving, drowsy driving. You want safer roads, and so do we. You're listening to the Driving Safety Show. Hear insights, in-depth analysis, and expert advice from key players in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors who are leading the way in making our roads safer. Are you ready to join us? And now, your host of the Driving Safety Show, Rich Sordahl.
Welcome to the Driving Safety Show. It's episode number 24. Today's guest has spent the last 21 years helping drivers navigate the roads and highways more safely. He holds certifications from IAM Road Smart in the UK, Smith System in the United States, and Man Profit Drive in Germany. He's also one of the most influential road safety advocates on LinkedIn, with nearly 16,000 followers. Coming to us from the birthplace of port wine, Porto, Portugal, Pedro Montenegro. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me.
Pedro, I've been following you now for many years on LinkedIn. You're very prolific with your posts about road safety, and I can definitely feel your passion about the topic. How did you get started in road safety?
This taste was not born with me, sure, but from an early age, I was influenced with my father in car racing on a international circuit near the city of Porto in Portugal. I obtained my license to drive cars and heavy trucks in the course of military service, and I was a transport officer, and I trained heavy truck drivers. As an electronics engineer, I worked 15 years in computer solutions and networks. In 1998, I started teaching in practical and theoretical defensive driving courses until today. I have worked in 10 countries on 4 continents. I love driving cars and trucks too.
Now, maybe, Pedro, you can help our audience understand a little bit more about the area in Europe. So Portugal is southwestern part of Europe, and so there's very many mountains. It's a mountainous country, correct?
Correct.
What would you say what is the culture of driving like? First of all, is it necessary to have a car? Is it tough to survive if you don't have access to transportation?
Yes. In my opinion, Portugal has an acceptable rate of road accidents today, but it does not have a true safety culture. Road accidents in Portugal, about 3,000 reported daily to insurance companies, are to assume the reality. Apparently not something serious for the society, Portuguese society. We have that toll 70% higher than our Spanish neighbors, and although we are about 10 million inhabitants, it costs several $billion per year. We Portuguese consider that road accidents happen only to the others, we thought. But it's important to have a car in Portugal. Smaller cities than Lisbon or Porto have major differences in public transport. Cycling is not a great solution because we have very bumpy localities, some mountains in almost of the cities and towns, many ups and downs. The road network is good and recent.
Are the roads, are they typically very narrow inside cities and towns?
Yes, they are.
What is an average speed limit in a city environment in kilometers?
It's 50 kilometers per hour, the maximum speed. We are thinking, Europe are thinking to reduce to 30 kilometers per hour, But here in Portugal, we have not a good urbanistic towns and cities, and we have big problems because we have houses near the factories and commercial, and is a problem. We have the pedestrian, the two wheels vehicles are very problematic in our towns and cities.
Are the larger cities like Porto, the one that you're living in, as well as Lisbon, are they trying to be more pedestrian friendly? You hear this topic often about urban mobility and trying to be more cycling friendly and pedestrian friendly. And we see some cities in the United States now are starting to use electric scooters to get around.
Yes, we have in Porto and Lisbon some hundreds of the electric scooters, but we have a problem with the pedestrians in our streets because we have some conflicts. We have some red lights, but sometimes the pedestrians don't respect. Other times the cars don't respect too much. Is a problem.
What are some of the most common unsafe driving behaviors that you see in Portugal? We in the United States, distracted driving has become a very, very major issue. Are you seeing that there in Portugal?
I think it's the same. 20 years ago, I saw this problem with a few mobile phones, but I think the car driving it seems more easy for the drivers, but the distracted driving is a big problem. The data that I have said about 40% of the big cause of road accidents. Then we have poor observation of the driver, where distractions are the main enhancer factor, like others. The fatigue, for instance, is the second for me, but the distracted driving is a big problem, is the principal problem. The main cause is that.
And are there anything, is there something that the government in Portugal has been trying to do, or is anybody getting involved to raise awareness about the dangers of using a phone while driving?
Very few. We have a very low police control of the users, the infractions on the roads and on the streets. I think it's important to have more control because I saw every day tens of drivers at the phone, the professional drivers and others, without problem. We have a big problem to solve here.
How difficult is it for somebody to obtain a driver's license in Portugal? What is the earliest age one can become a licensed driver?
The age is 18, and I think is very easy to obtain the first license. I think the only difficulty is the time, the duration. Some months to obtain the first license, about 3 months minimum. Some guys have some difficulties on the first exam, but easily he can obtain the license on the second exam. Is easy in my opinion.
And at some point, do drivers have to be retested, 10 years later, 15 years later, or is that not a necessary part of it?
Only 32 years later, if he obtains at 18. But only the medical classification or exam, only medical exam.
What about? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, for the renew of the license, only medical.
What about the police officers and how they handle traffic violations? Are they particularly lenient, or are there certain types of violations that the police focus on more in Portugal?
Yes, I think they are the more easy to control, like speed, like the irregular parking, like phone, okay, the seatbelt too, but the alcohol on Friday and Saturday night, there are some control, but I think is allow control, a few control. I think it must be more frequent to the all drivers. On the professional of heavy vehicles, the control is better, is more frequent.
Pedro, let's talk about the work that you're doing. So you've been consulting and doing project management and helping companies with their driving safety for more than 20 years. Is this a company you started? Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I founded my company. I have worked with some largest fleets of light and heavy vehicles. Today, I do the same work, but I'm helping some countries in Africa and Asia to reduce road risk regionally and nationally.
And are you working only with fleets, or do you also help individual people become better drivers?
I help individuals, people, but it's not easy in my country. I several times, a few of times, I do that to particular to private people, but it's not easy because is the culture is not good, and it's not easy to obtain the customers with us. Only companies.
Okay. And when you do help companies, is your consulting a mixture of both classroom as well as in the vehicle training?
Yes, we do the work. Essentially, it was the reduce of the road risk, but we do the reduce fuel consumption and the wear of the heavy or light vehicle. We do the efficient driving. Because the price of the fuel is very high in Portugal, okay, and it's important. I think we optimization the vehicle maintenance too, with some procedures and some things we think is very important, like the air filter of the engine. A heavy truck needs about 10,000 liters of air to burn 1 liter of diesel. It's important the replace, like the axle alignment and wheel balance should be more frequent is important for the safety too, and for the efficiency of the truck. And other things important are the cleaning of the car windows and the rear view mirrors should be more frequently, especially from inside, because the driver needs always the windows more transparent.
So when you help companies with their driving safety, are you? It's a broader approach. So you're helping them not just with the driving aspect, but you're giving them it's really a full solution for improving their operation of the fleet. So you're talking about lower fuel spending, talking about improved safety.
Yes. Normally, the ideal training, we have two phases: one practical, another theoretical, and a second practical. When we do the coaching with the driver about implement some procedures more safety and more efficient of the driving. Essentially are like that. We drive in open space in the public road, and in some circuits, some limited space to do some exercises, some simulations too about braking, about the handling of the steering wheel, and the how to observe the good observation of the road scenario, and other things we think are important.
You've been doing this for a long time now, and so based on all of your experience in seeing people go through the process of becoming better drivers, do you think it's possible that anybody can become a better driver with training?
I think yes. I think it is important because I think the procedures and the techniques of driving are perfectly defined, and the drivers, I think, after the first license of driving, they don't have any people to control them, and we have some problems of the how to drive better, and I think it's important to train, to speak, to stop 1, 2, 3, 4 hours to listen what can do better on our driving.
Now, on your LinkedIn page, you have a picture of, it is the Center for Dynamic Driving Training, and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the name of that city, but
Guilherme.
Okay.
The Guilherme.
What is this? It looks like in your description, this is probably the best place to really have a safe environment to train drivers. Could you tell us a little bit about that center?
Yes, it's a state-of-art car driving training center for a variety of heavy and light car simulations that I consider important. I think it was a motor racing track that 20 years ago was transformed into a training center where we taught courses to oil companies, utilities, telecommunications, and pharmaceutical laboratories. The excellence course is the fuel tank anti-rollover. We have there with the drivers of the fuel tanks in Portugal. We have a great job in this matter.
And a pretty large facility. The picture you have is of an aerial shot above, but this is a pretty substantial size training course.
We have now few courses because there are another location to do this training near Lisbon, the capital of Portugal. But sometimes we do the course in this space.
And mostly, that course is mostly used for professional drivers, or is it also for individual private?
Essential, they are professional drivers with light cars. We have some commercial and technicals of some companies.
What about the autonomous vehicle? A lot of talk in the news about driverless cars. Do you have any autonomous vehicles that are currently being tested in Portugal right now?
I think yes, but I didn't saw any. But what I think I see and hear a few comments about these vehicles in my country. But at the international level, it seems to me that they are encountering many difficulties in project development, I think.
Yeah, you think they might be a little bit too optimistic about their ability to perform safely?
Yes, from now, yes. I have listened 10 years ago, the car makers said in a few years we had some autonomous car on everywhere, but I think there are a very large number of autonomous vehicle testing, but it's not for now, I think.
So, Pedro, after 20 years of work in road safety, do you envision a future where transportation is not as dangerous as it is today? We have over 40,000 fatalities every year on average in the United States, over 1 million worldwide. That's really scary, and there's got to be a better way. So do you think transportation can become safer in the future?
It's not easy. What I saw in the last decades, and I have been studying road accidents all over the world and see big differences. Even in the United States, I know there are states that have a very good road accident rates, and other states with more serious rates. I think is a difference in legislation, in police control, that I think is different in your states. But I know there are good knowledge in your country, and it is possible to be more widespread and working in some states that are less well. It's not well, but it's not easy because I think the more advanced countries have solutions to improve, but in countries like Africa and Asia, where I work too, accidents will continue to increase as they still have because they have very few cars, only about 10% per capita than in Europe. They have poor infrastructure and lower range vehicles. But I think the problem is the same. I have some thousands of kilometers in Africa, and I think it's possible to do better by the user, the car user, the heavy truck driver too. It's possible to do better, but I think the user must have more knowledge and other skills.
Pedro, we're coming up on our allotted time. What's next for you in your career? Do you have any special projects you're working on or things that you would like to talk about that you're involved in?
For me, I think it's important to respect more the the vehicle, the light car and the heavy vehicle. Now I'm working with some governments, countries in Africa and Asia too. But training for a car fleet driver is my favorite. I like very much. It's important for me. I have the knowledge of some important car makers and heavy truck makers like MAN, like Mercedes and Volvo. But the global problems I saw in Africa, the worst is a big problem. In Angola, for instance, is the first cause of death. The malaria is the second one. Is about 50 years. It was the first cause of death. The problem with the malaria, but in the last years, the death on the roads are the first. It's a problem, a big problem, but I think we have solutions to reduce these big bad numbers.
Pedro, what's the best way for people to stay in touch with you or follow what you're doing? Is it LinkedIn?
Yeah, I have some problems with my site. The LinkedIn I think is a good contact of mine. I did some business with LinkedIn, not only, but LinkedIn I think is a good reference of myself.
So before we go, Pedro, do you have any final message about road safety you would like to give our audience?
Yes. I was very fond of car drivers being a little more interested in the very possible reduction of road risk. The advantages are great for them and for all of us who walk the roads and streets of our planet.
Well, that's a great way to end this interview. Pedro, I appreciate so much your time today, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. I'll continue to follow you on LinkedIn, and please keep up the great work to help all of us help raise awareness for better transportation.
It's a pleasure for me being with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Once again, that was Pedro Montenegro, one of the top road safety advocates, not just in Portugal, but all of Europe. Please share this podcast with your family, friends, and coworkers and help us educate the public about critical driving safety issues. 40,000 people die on America's roads every year, 1.3 million worldwide. That's just unacceptable. Until next time, please drive safely.
You've been listening to the Driving Safety Show. To stay up to date on the latest episodes, visit driversalert.com/driving-safety-podcast. There you can sign up for episode notifications, listen to past episodes, and even request to be a guest on the show. And don't forget, the Driving Safety Show is the show that features the movers and shakers who are working hard to make our roads safer. See you next time.